Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Shit Loretta Knows. So today we're talking about you aren't who you think you are. And why is this important? Well, because it's been coming for years, right? That I see glimpses of how this actually works. And I think I finally got enough of a handle on it to be able to explain it to someone else. So let's hope that you can understand. So, one of the buzzwords at the moment is being authentic. So, you've got to be authentic in your marketing. You've got to be authentic in your message. You've got to be authentic coach. You've got to show up in the world authentically. But what does that really mean? So I always understood that being authentic is like being okay to be you. So if I want to cry, I'm going to cry. If I want to rant and rave, I'm going to rant and rave. I get to show you my strong bits. I get to show you my weak bits. And I get to be okay with all of that. And that's sort of showing up vulnerable. So I think what's actually happened is now, especially on social media, vulnerability. I did something weird on my phone. Authenticity seems to be equated to vulnerability. So in other words, when I can be open and honest with you about the shit that I'm going through, then you're seeing my authentic self. Well, I don't know. Maybe you're just seeing the shit I'm going through right now. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that our minds lie, remember? And so we measure the parts of ourselves that we think are authentically us with our mind, because that's all we can do. That's the only thing. So if you say to me, Loretta, what is authentically you? Then I'd say, well, one of the things that is authentically me is that I'm actually an introvert, but I'm sort of on the extroversion side of that kind of introversion spectrum, but I'm actually an introvert. I'm a loner. I don't like to people too much. I get exhausted by too many people. I don't like to be overwhelmed by people. I like to have space on my own. I like to have time on my own. Even from people that I really love, like my husband knows, when I put that boundary down, then he's got to just leave me alone for a while, because actually that's what I need. So is that truly who I am, or is that part of the defense mechanism that I've developed against life? So this is what I mean by you aren't who you think you are. So many of you who followed me for a long time, you know that I talk about we have these limiting beliefs that are developed in the first 3 years of our lives. Now, a lot of people use the term limiting beliefs, and a limiting belief could be, so in the sort of general terminology, I might believe that I might believe that I don't have anything of value to share. And that's a belief that I could change, because actually as I grow into what I find valuable for me, and as I use it with other people, then I have evidence to indicate that what I have is valuable. So, the fact that there's at least one person watching this means that someone finds enough value to be on here right now. So that's a belief that I can change. And it's usually, I gather some sort of evidence that changes that belief. But when I'm talking about limiting beliefs, I'm talking about those that are formed from the time that you're conceived to the time that you're about 3 years old. And those beliefs are all formed in response to either not getting a need met, a basic fundamental need, not being attached to your caregiver enough, right? Because your caregiver might be really anxious, not because your mother doesn't love you, but because your mother has high anxiety around the responsibilities around mothering. And babies don't come with a manual. So, I wish they did. They don't come with an off switch. They don't come with a manual. So it's got nothing to do with love. It's got to do with how safe you feel in the world. And so we can have big T traumas that can happen to us. Our parents might die, or we may be victims of abuse, or we might be we might grow up with parental figures that have problems with addiction or what. So those are big T traumas. And we can have those. But whenever you don't have a fundamental need met, whatever your need is, when you don't get your need met, you experience that as a trauma. And what happens is you develop a belief about yourself, because babies are intrinsically narcissistic in terms of the fact that they are self-centered. They don't know, they don't understand how the world works. They've been in utero for 9 months. They don't understand how the world works. And so they automatically respond to the feelings of people around them, because cognitively they can't do that either, because that part of their brain isn't fully developed yet, that neocortex, the frontal part. But they respond to the feelings. And because they are self-centered, because they don't know anything better, basically whatever the parent or the authority figure or the caregiver is going through, they translate to themselves. So what happens is my mother doesn't like tiny babies, or is intimidated by tiny babies, or my mother read Dr. Spock, and so, babies should be tightly swaddled, and they should be left alone, and they shouldn't be fed for more than, they should only be fed every 4 hours, and, don't pamper them and don't over cuddle them or whatever, for example. And I have an intrinsic need to be really close to my mother, and that's not what she's providing. And so what I then start is I develop a belief, and that belief might be, I don't matter, I'm not worthy, I'm invisible, I'm powerless, I don't belong. It could be any one of those, right? The belief itself doesn't really matter. So I develop a belief about myself, and then I develop a belief about other people. So if I believe that I'm not worthy, then I might believing that other people are worthy, and it's my job to make sure that they stay happy. And I develop a view of the world. So, if I'm the one that's always unworthy, and I'm the one who's always putting out to everyone else, right, making sure that they stay happy, the world's an unfair place, or the world is scary, or the world is overwhelming, or the world is intimidating. And then what happens is I have another basic need that isn't met. And so I may develop a different belief about myself, or it might reinforce that I'm not worthy. And then it reinforces my belief about what others are, and it reinforces my belief about the world. And this is a necessary process that we all have to go through so that we can fully develop our egos. Because your ego is your vehicle that allows you to navigate your way through the world. You have to have it, right? Okay. The problem is that we make the faithful servant, the ego and the mind, we make that the master, as opposed to allowing the spirit to be the master and the ego and the mind to be the faithful servant. But we don't know this when we're tiny. And then when we're about 18 months old or so, we start learning how to say no. Now, I watched an interesting YouTube video with Dr. Gabor Mate. I've just finished listening to a book of his called The Myth of Normal. By the way, it's very long. It's like 600 pages. That's why I listened to it on Audible. Well worth listening to, okay? Really fascinating book. Anyway, he said that this is a developmental stage. We all know this is a developmental stage. And it is essential for children to learn how to say no to their authority figures so that they can develop a will, so that their will can develop, right? So they say, no, this is what I want. What you want is not what I want. This is what I want. And that in actual fact, the strength of your no will determine the authenticity of your yeses. That's not quite what he said. He said something like, if you never learn to say no effectively, then all your yeses, everything you say yes to, is essentially meaningless. So this all happens in the first 3 years of your life. And by the time that you're 3 years old, your ego is developed and you essentially see yourself as a separate being to other humans, right? And you have this map of reality that helps you govern your way, negotiate your way through the world. It helps you orient yourself to the world. So what you may have learned is authority figures are not necessarily fair, or, my needs are not worth being met because I'm not worthy. Therefore, in order to get my needs met, I have to be super nice. I have to make sure that I make my caregiver, my mother and father, whoever's my caregiver, happy. And so what happens is you develop a coping strategy to make sure that you stay loved and that you don't get abandoned, because if you're a baby and you get abandoned, you're going to die, okay? So you develop a coping strategy. So your coping strategy or your coping mechanism is to be good. Because if you're good and you don't make any waves and you don't upset them, then they're going to keep you in the tribe. But you never discuss this with them because, well, that's not what we do, because we don't want to piss the caregivers off. So we don't want to, for a minute, suggest that we're not getting what we want from our caregivers. So we don't discuss it with them. And as a consequence of that, we keep on reinforcing the coping mechanism. So now if my coping mechanism is to become the good girl, the one who doesn't make waves, the one who doesn't give my mother a hard time, the one who makes sure that my mother is always okay, essentially, even when I'm tiny, what happens is I may well develop a personality trait of being kind. And every time I'm kind, everyone says, oh, Loretta, she's so lovely. She's such a kind child. And then when I'm 2 or 3, my mother sends me to nursery school and the teacher says, Loretta is so kind to the other children. And because I'm kind to the other children like me and now they want to be my friend. And the teacher likes me because I'm kind. And then that reinforces that kind is the way to get your way through the world. And this, my friends, is how our personalities develop. So when you say to me, so Loretta, what is the trait that you admire about yourself the most? I might be, well, one of the traits I admire about myself the most is that I'm quite logical. I can get I'm very good at separating the facts from the drama for other people. Not for myself, of course, but for other people. I'm good at separating, what is factual here and what's just like the story. And I'm calm in a crisis. I'm reliable. I'm dependable. Can you hear? Those are all quite positive things, right? Those are all personality traits that I've developed as a consequence of my coping mechanism. That is not who I am. So when you say, Loretta, who are you? And I say, well, I'm Loretta Ferrucci and I'm the spiritual being having this physical experience, and the traits, my personality, this is what I'm like, describe yourself. And you go, well, I'm actually quite good in a crisis. I tend to be very calm. People come to me for advice. I'm very logical. I'm very methodical. I help to break things down into like small chunks for people that they can really understand. That's actually one of my superpowers. This is my personality. The truth is, those are all traits that I've developed as a consequence of my coping strategy. So my coping strategy was to have control. So I wanted control because I thought everything was out of control, obviously on some level when I was tiny. And so I need to control myself, others in the world is my limiting belief. And so my coping strategy is to control, but not to control in a way that's domineering and aggressive, although I, of course, can do that. None of you have seen that, obviously. But more in the control of like, I have the answers. Let me help you sort out the shit in your life. Now, this has served me amazingly because people come to me because they feel like they're out of control. They feel like there's shit going down in their lives and they need someone to help them make sense of it, break it down so that they can metabolize it, right? And so every time someone says to me, oh my God, you are such a good doctor. You're so good with people. Like, yeah, of course I'm good with people because I have learned that getting to know people is the key to understanding how it is that I can be in control. Because if you're out of control, because something's not happening in your life, maybe you have a disease process, and I can help put it into a kind of, I can break it down for you in a way that you can understand. And even more importantly, I can break down what it is you can do about that so that you can create health. Can you see that looks like, oh my God, Loretta's this really wonderful person who's very compassionate with her clients and her patients and just wants to help people. The truth is, Loretta's spent 30 years learning about human behavior so that she could understand what she thought was the fucked up behavior of her family so that she could actually have some sort of control in her family, in her own mind. Okay, this has got nothing to do with my family, actually. This is all my issue. And one of the ways of having that control is knowing how universal laws work, knowing how energy laws work, understanding human behavior, understanding like the laws of creation. I mean, really, if you understand how the universe works, as in like universal law, right? Well, shit sakes, then you can make sure that even when shit happens, because we all know we can't control that, you actually have some way of getting the control back. And that helps to alleviate the anxiety. So the truth is that every single one of us has every single trait. And there are 4,900 traits or something that John DeMartini has identified, okay? And every human has every trait. But the ones that you will display are generally the ones that have got you what you needed in terms of your coping strategy that you had to develop in response to your early childhood trauma. And so, am I really an introvert? Actually, let's just go to that one. Well, I grew up in a family. I was the youngest of 3 children. My sister was 10 when I was born. My brother was 7 when I was born. My parents, they were all very strong. Everyone was very strong and sort of dominating kind of personality to this tiny little girl that was there, all right? They were all much older than me. My siblings, my sister could probably do long division when I was born. I couldn't even scratch my nose. So because there was lots of volatility, and so my sister's actually watching this, and so it was volatile. My father was Italian; he had a temper. My mother didn't stand back, so it was loud. My Italian family were loud; they were boisterous, right? So for me, it was like, oh my holy shit balls! This is like chaotic. No one was mean. No one was abusive. No one neglected me. At no time did I feel like I wasn't loved. That some of my fundamental needs were just to actually be on my own so that I didn't have to listen to all this like big people stuff, right? And so that was a coping strategy for me to be able to control what I thought was out of control. And so now here, my sister says lots of volatility, understatement. So am I truly an introvert? Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe I'm not. This is what I mean by we've got to watch out how we define ourselves. We've got to watch out what personality traits we give ourselves, because the truth is we've all got all the traits. Most of the traits that you exhibit are the ones that you're happy to show people, the ones that you're proud of. Those are the ones that are associated with the validation that you got for your coping strategy. So I'm going to use my lovely sister as an example. So my sister, right? My sister she was lovely to me. I was never scared of my sister when I was little. But my sister was always happy to take on a confrontation. She would not shut up if just to keep the peace. That wasn't part of her deal. So that was her coping strategy, right? And so that's a part of her that I actually admire, except when I'm the one who has to have the confrontation with her, because then that used to scare me. So, was my sister really difficult? Was my sister confrontational? Was my sister a fighter? Well, I don't think she was when she started out, but my sister learned to develop those traits because they got her what she needed. So when my sister stood up for herself, everyone took notice. When my sister said, this is bullshit, this is not going to fly, everyone took notice. If my sister was being particularly difficult, we all tiptoed. So she basically got what she needed. I'm sorry to have dragged you into this, sis. But that's how this works. So your negative, whether you are judging these personality traits as positive or negative, that's an arbitrary distinction. Because what someone else might say is aggressive, I might say is assertive. And I might admire that about them. And you may dislike that about them. So the traits that we exhibit, very often the ones that we're proud of, they're the ones that got validation in our coping strategy. I don't take any shit from anyone. If you're a confrontational kind of person, you would be proud of that. All right. So as opposed to, oh my goodness, I just let everyone walk all over me. Now that's one that you're not proud of, but that is also part of your coping strategy, because when you've got I'm unworthy as your limiting belief and you have a lot of your identity tied up in being a nice person, you struggle to say no, you struggle to set boundaries, you struggle to stand up for yourself. And very often people take advantage of that. But you take that as the price that you have to pay for being nice and kind. So your negative traits are also can be a product of your limiting beliefs. So that's what I mean by you are not who you think you are. What I also mean by you are not who you think you are is a lot of the shit, 90% of what runs you is unconscious, sitting in your unconscious, that you don't have daily access to unless you really try and find it. And so you don't even know what's running you until you start asking the questions and until you start actually looking for what is true about you. So I'm going to tell you a story about what happened to me this morning. Now, this is not to garner sympathy, okay? Please. So just a little bit of a backstory. So my sister was 10 years older than I am, and my sister was like my mother when I was tiny. And my sister matriculated when she was 17 and went to university. So by the time she went off to university, I was 7. And she and I had shared a bedroom our whole life. I've told the story before. We shared a bedroom. And so whenever I was scared, if there was I was scared of the dark or whatever, I just used to go to her and tap her. She'd move up. I'd slide in behind her and I'd sleep in the bed with her. And then my sister left. So after that, if I woke up in the middle of the night, I didn't have my sister to climb in the bed with. So this morning, moved to today, I'm doing my circle work, my intuitive stuff about, the day and connecting to, and I go into my current reality relative to this program that I'm putting on. And so I connect to my program and, I want to empower people and I want them to find their creative genius and I want them to live lives of vitality and health and inspiration and all the rest. And I step into the circle of my reality. This is how we do this work. And a memory comes up of me waking up in the middle of the night, being scared. My parents' room we've got a very big house, was down, far down the passage from me. And my parents used to sleep with their bedroom door closed. And what I didn't really compute well at the time is that my parents both used to take something to help them sleep. It wasn't really a sleeping pill. It was like a tranquilizer, right? So they both took this medication at night. And of course, it made them sleep really deeply. Because I'd never had to wake my parents up in the middle of the night. First of all, it's dark. I'm scared. I'm crying. And I'm confronted by this closed door. Now, I'm too scared to open the door, right? Not because I'm scared of my parents, but because I'm scared to open the door. So probably the first time I did this, I did open the door. And I went into the room. And even though I was crying and making a noise, my parents didn't wake up. And so I had to wake my mother, and my mother woke up extremely startled, right? Scared the shit out of me. And so after that, I was too scared. She didn't shout. She wasn't mean. She just let me get in the bed with her. She was very loving, and we all went to sleep, right? But I was so horrified by having disturbed my mother in this way that after that, I was too scared to knock on the door. And so what I would do is I'd walk up and down the passage and I would be crying, hoping that someone would hear me. And what was going on there was I felt unseen, I felt unheard. And suddenly this morning, here I am, 52 years old, boom. Now I've known this. I mean, this is not news to me. But how that was impacting my current reality is only what I discovered this morning. I feel invisible. At the moment, in a particular area of my life, I feel invisible. I feel unseen. I feel unheard. I feel like I can't wake the people that I want to wake because I'm too scared to on some level, or I'm trying to. It's like you're in a dream, you're waking someone up and they're just not waking. They're just not seeing you. So that is something that's been sitting in my unconscious that I had no idea was running a situation that's currently in my life until I took the time this morning to actually connect to my intuition and allow that to come up. So, am I still that scared little girl in the passage? Well, I didn't think so. Am I that scared little girl in the passage that feels unseen and unheard relative to this particular area of my life, a particular area of my life that I was working with this morning? Fuck yes. Did I know this yesterday? No. Did I know it this morning when I woke up? No. Did I find it when I went to do the practice and looked for some answers? Yes. There it was. So that's just an example of what sits in your unconscious and how what's in your unconscious is affecting you currently, but you're not even aware of it. So this memory of this, like not waking my parents, is not new to me. I've probably told the story on social media. In fact, my sister knows the story, right? So, because I've told her before. I told my mother when I was older. Honestly, this was like a big problem for me, all right? So it's not like it's unknown. It's not like this is deep, dark memory that I've been repressing. But what I haven't been aware of is how it's actually affecting my current situation. So if we don't start making the time and we don't start taking the trouble and we don't start having enough compassion for ourselves to actually truly want to connect to who we really are, because who we really are exists beyond our personality traits. It exists beyond our thoughts and feelings. It exists beyond our memories. It's that part of us that is limitless. That's that part of your soul that is longing for freedom. It's longing for the freedom to express itself fully in this lifetime. That's who we really are. That's the part of us that's eternal, that exists throughout space and time. Now, do we walk around going, well, here's my limitless spirit. Can you see it? No. But the more you integrate the real parts of yourself, the more, first of all, the more you realize that you have all the traits. You're not missing anything. Okay? I'm going to talk about that a little bit now. But the more you realize you have all the traits, the more you realize that they are not who you are. In other words, I can be a mean bitch or I can be the milk of human kindness. And the truth is, if I understand that, truly get that, then when it's necessary, when I need to defend something that I think is really important and I need to be a mean bitch, I can pull her out and I can do that without it having to be some sort of fake persona. And when I am moved to compassion and empathy and want to be kind and do a true act of kindness for someone, I can do that too. And the best part about that is I don't judge. When I'm kind, I'm a good girl, going to get a gold star. And when I'm a bitch, I'm a bad girl, going to get a black star. No. Because you know what? Those are parts of my personality, that all the traits that are available to me that help me be a complete human. So how do you find some of your disowned parts? Well, an easy way is to realize that every single person in your life is a mirror. Every person in your life is mirroring your disowned personality traits to you. So when you think someone is amazing, if you can identify what exactly is it about that person that you think is so amazing, what exactly is it, right? Is it that they are compassionate? Is it that they are intellectual? Is it that they are practical? Is it that they are funny? What is it? And then ask yourself, where do I have that? To the same degree, not in the same form, but just to the same degree. Because if they've got it and you are seeing it and admiring it, It's a disowned part of you. And by the same token, when someone is being a right knob, identify what it is about them that grinds your ovaries. And then ask yourself, where do I have that? Where have I done that to people in my life? Don't just ask yourself, where do I have that? Find real memories. Like, where have I done that? So if that person is very selfish, let's say, where are you selfish? Where were you selfish yesterday? Where were you selfish a year ago? Where were you selfish 5 years ago? Find all the memories you can remember of having been selfish until you can see that you have that trait. Because until you own it, it's running you. And what's happening is you're suppressing it and it comes out in ways that you do not want it to. So you know when someone is like squeaky clean, Shame, I always use poor Tiger Woods, right? Because he's a great example of this. So Tiger Woods was Mr. Squeaky Clean. Mr. America, hey? Nice looking guy, exceedingly talented golfer, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, beautiful house, wonderful dad, great relationship with his own father, blah, 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 blah. Big scandal. Not only was he cheating on his wife, but he was cheating on his wife with, I can't even remember. I can't remember if it was cocktail waitresses or porn stars or whoever. It doesn't matter, okay? But, you know, he wasn't doing it with anyone proper. and you know, his wife tried to beat him with the golf club, and like it was in the neighborhood and all the rich neighbors saw, and sordid. It was sordid, right? I remember it was a massive scandal. And it was like, how could Mr. Squeaky Clean fall so hard? Well, first of all, we put people on pedestals and then we love it when they fall down. We love that. Okay. It's part of, I don't know, human fucked upness. But the fact is that when people are too one-sided, when they are too nice, when they're too kind, when they're too empathetic, when they're too trusting, when they're just too noble, I'm always like, oh, okay, I don't know. You know, I need to go and speak to that person's spouse, partner, business partner, children, and find out what they really like. I mean, I don't really have any interest in doing that, but that's going to give you a better idea of what they really like. So when you own your disowned parts, you become the master of them rather than they becoming the master of you. So, you know, when you have your positive and negative personality traits, if you call them that, it's like you build a house and you've got all these rooms, and you've got this room is independent, and this room is strong, and this room is talented, and this room is empathetic, and this room is kind, and this one is weak, and this one is needy, and this one's clingy, and this one's pathetic, and this one's avaricious, and this one is betrayal, and this one is lying, cheating, scumbag. And what you do is you close half the house, and you only ever let people see the good bits of the house. And you never maintain the closed bits of the house, ever. Until eventually that part of the house just starts falling apart. And that's usually when shit starts going down in your life, okay? That's when that stuff is running you as opposed to you running it. So, this is what I mean by saying, you are not who you think you are. And it's okay if you can identify. You know what? I am actually really good at taking complex concepts and breaking them down into small chunks for people. I'm really good at that. Is that who I am? No, that's what I'm really good at. Why am I really good at it? Well, because it kept me alive. It kept me alive in my mind. That's what I thought it did. And ever since then, it's been saving my bacon, and I made an entire career out of it. Is it a bad thing? No. It only becomes a bad thing to me when I have no choice but to be that way, when I can't say no to anyone, when I have to help everyone, when I insist on helping people when they haven't even asked me, when I give unsolicited advice, okay? Then it doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve them. So getting to know who you really are, I think that might be part of the purpose of life. And until you know those parts behind the parts, right? Are you truly being your authentic self? And why would you want to be your authentic self? Well, you know what? I think that when you turn into more, as you grow into your authentic self, and this is a process, it's not an event, you tend to have fewer fucks to give what other people think. You tend to be more aligned with your true nature and purpose. And you tend to live a more spirit-led life. Not a more spiritual, just a more spirit-led life with more intuition and more joy and more fulfillment. And who doesn't want more of that? So, this is exactly what I help my clients do. I help you find out who you really are, beyond all the bullshit, the stories, the conditions, the expectations, the limiting beliefs, the coping strategies, once you recognize them, once you can see them for what they are, if you can just name them every day, I promise you, your life will get so much. You don't even have to be able to do anything else. Just get really real with where you are today. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you trying to do to make yourself feel better? You know, which personality traits are you enamored with? Which personality traits do you hide? Which are the rooms that you're never renovating in your house ever and never letting anyone look into, and they're like full of stinky mold? And then, well, you can decide what it is that you want to do. This is what I help my clients do. So if you are ready to start living a more spirit-led life, if you are wanting to make sense of what is running you, if you want to become the master, if you want to assert your master to be your spirit and your faithful servant to be your ego and your mind, and if you want to create optimal health and vitality for yourself, then I can help you do that, and I'd love to. So if you are keen, you can send me a message, or you can just leave a comment, keen or yes, or I'm in, and I will contact you. We'll set up a free call to discuss what it is that you need, where it is that you are, and what I can do to help you get to where you would love to go. Or not, and if I can't help you, I usually know someone else who can help you better than me. So I would love to have you as my next client. Can't wait to meet you. Thank you to those of you who have been on your live. Thank you to those of you who have sat through the whole 30 minutes. Only 4 out of the 7 actually made it. So if you are on your live, please type live. If you are watching the replay, please type replay. And I will pin this post at the top of the page. If you've got friends that you think would benefit from this kind of stuff, please will you invite them into Vitality Matters. I'm really trying to grow my group a little bit. I haven't put much effort into doing that recently, but I'm getting back on the wagon of that one. So invite your friends. They can join or not join, right? You're not going to be coerced. And you know what? Here's the nice thing is if you don't like the group you're in, you just hit the leave group button. So simple. Anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing Tuesday. And I'll speak to you all again next week with